Hi, we're going to work on baking ambient occlusion out. Notice there's a couple people I've talked to in the past that were trying to get something as a base to paint with, and I kept pointing to Blender Internal, and we still had discussions about how things didn't look right. So I've been digging around and I figured out a couple little tricks, and I figured I'd share them. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Blender Render, and I'm going to just delete that cube. Shift S to send my cursor to center, and guess I'm going to work with like a teapot. Shift A, add mesh, extra objects, miscellaneous teapot. The reason I want to work with a teapot is it'll look nicer and we'll get a better result right off the bat. Okay, over here in the outliner, I'm just going to switch this to a UV image editor. I'm going to bring that over a little bit so we can kind of see it. But we're going to be using basically this setup here is what I'm going to stick with for right now. What I want to do is I want to unwrap my mesh, so I'll go to tab into edit mode. Typically you'd work with setting up seams and such, but since I didn't make this model, I'm not sure where I should put them, so I'm going to just cheat a little bit. I'm going to use Smart UV Project with the letter U, and I'm going to give an island margin of 0.03. Hit OK, and then there's my UVs. Now that they're all selected, I'm going to add a new image, and I'm going to keep it at the basic 1024, the 1K. I want to set it up, well, I'm not even going to worry about the color. Instead of blank, I'm going to go with a color grid. Hit OK, and we'll see how that lines up. I'm not even assigning material or anything yet. All I'm doing is just working in Blender Render with the image here under the UVs. I'm going to switch to texture mode or texture view, and you'll see that it's pretty much okay. If I tab into object mode, this brings up one of the first things that I noticed when working with the objects. I always kind of like started making copies of the lights, I'd make shift duplicate and bring it over here and try to light up the area so I could see it and such. And I found out by accident that I didn't even need to mess with that. I'm going to delete that. Instead, I'll select my object, and over on the number pad they've got a slash key for going to isolate mode. Go into isolate mode and boom! Look, there you go. You can see your texture all the way around for painting, no problem. So I'm going to go with that. But like I said, in edit mode we can see the wires. It's still kind of low poly. One of the first things I found out with baking is that if you can do it, add a subsurf modifier and go up to at least like level 4, so you give plenty of triangles for the calculation. Okay, now I'm going to show you without that. I'm going to set it down at like maybe 2. And we're just going to go to the bake. I'm not even going to set up ambient occlusion. I'm just going to go to the bake tab down here at the bottom, and I'll choose ambient occlusion, and everything's set. I'm not even making anything new. I'm just going to hit bake, and you'll see it go pretty quickly, but on close inspection you see all these spots, and a couple of friends of mine had noticed that kind of stuff happening, and I had different ideas about how to fix that until I realized that maybe that's just because I haven't even done anything with the ambient occlusion yet. So here in our world properties, I'll come down and I'll turn on ambient occlusion, and that brings up the gather tab. See, like if you turn it off, it's not available. Turn it on, there it is available. Now here samples is 5. And well, I just wanted to be stupid. I'll go ahead and change that to 30, and let me see what happens with the baking now. And just press bake, and it's still fast, but that's because I haven't increased my subsurf yet. Also, I'd like to point out while I was doing that you can see the striations there with the polys, the lines. And we're getting there. Just It's a little bit slower than the other map. Like I said, we haven't even actually put this in a material or texture slot yet, and that's pretty cool. The pretty cool thing about using the Blender render for doing your texturing is that you can work without having to set up your materials right away. Just make sure you unwrap to an image, and you've got the image, you know, active in your view in the UV image editor. And it's going. And I was freaking out at first. I saw the tiny little triangles that looked like they weren't finishing, but it was that margin. By the way, over here in my settings, I've got it set up to go outward a little bit on the margin. Okay, so we've got that, and you'll see it's a lot cleaner, but I've still got a lot of this variation because of the mesh itself. It's catching. It's because of the mesh itself. It's getting a little bit of that. Also got this goofy. The model's not very well made right there. But I'm going to try increasing the subsurf to 4, and then baking again. It's going to be considerably slower now, but if we zoom in on just that image, you'll see it's because it's drawing very many more tiny triangles. And the idea is that this gives me something to paint on as a texture, also to blend in. And it makes a good base for painting on once you start, you know, texture painting, to just work from the ambient occlusion. Especially if you're looking for in-game, if you're making something that needs to look like it's worn and torn and stuff, this is a good start to get something nice and smooth and slick with the ambient occlusion, so it's already looking like it's shaded, even if you're not going to use real-time lighting. Get out of that, so it should be done here in a minute. Well, I was Control Tab to go full screen on the UV image editor, by the way. Almost done. Okay, now let's take a look at that. Now that result's a lot smoother, and I can go back to my model, go back down to 1 on the subsurf. And now you can see the subsurf smoothing there. You can see that I've got the simplified mesh, so you can see the edge of the object has got a little bit of facet. You know, you can see where the rings are, but the bake is nice and smooth and clear, and that's pretty quick. And that's, like I said, that's something we can turn around and actually affect. So say like I want to change this up. The interesting thing is I can actually work from right here in the compositor. I can reference that new baked image untitled 001 and run that to a viewer. Okay, set my backdrop so I can see it there, and then I'm going to go to viewer node over here so I can actually save out whatever change I make. So from here I'll add a maybe a brightness contrast. Actually, it's easier just to go RGB curve, and then I'll just bring up the level, and that brightens it out. Crazy, you can get crazy with it, push it in weird ways. At the same time, if you already have an idea of what color you want, you can start pulling colors out, try to get something close to what you want. It, you know, like I said, it depends on what you want to do. Okay, now sometimes for working with textures that I've already made from a photograph, what I'll find is that if I change the black level to something else, you can actually affect your output. Also, your white level, if you bring that down, you can brighten stuff out that way. And that just depends on what kind of adjustment you want to make. Another thing you can do, mute that. M to mute. Okay. In this chain, let me go ahead and add a filter. And that one's a soften. And that just softens everything in the image. We can also get kind of crazy, do some crazy stuff like that. Sobel, Kirsch. Shadow kind of puts a very strong edge to everything, so it depends on what kind of textures you're working with. If you're looking to make something look like metal, you might try using that shadow in order to get something a base to paint on. Just a straight sharpen filter does something similar to that, and like I said, you can bring it down to a level that you want. So it'll sound like something like leather. You might find some of these patterns in there by accident, and then you can come back and paint on top of them. And you can clone in other pieces, like you can actually take a piece of this, crop it, and then paint around it. But that's to save this image, I would just hit F3 and then save it as an iteration of like AO textured sharp. The desktop like that. But that doesn't mean that my other texture is different. That one's still there, and I can save that one, save as image, and I can put that on as my AO bake 4X. And that gives me something to paint with. And like I said, I can get rid of this. Don't have to actually work with that right now. So now I've got the image there. I've got it set up. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a material. And I'm just got basic shading for right now. I'm going to add a texture. And I'm choose image, and then I'm going to choose that image I just specified, and then I'm going to change that to UV. And then for right now, that's basically what we're getting. And if I tab in edit mode, you can see how much bleed I've got on the texture. Okay, so then the only thing left is, does this work still? There's your, with your lamp, that's what your lighting would be, so you can actually work with lights and set them up for your scene, but locally it's nice and well lit, you can see everything. So then we could go to texture paint. We could load up, say, a brush texture, which we'd need to go to brushes for. And I'm just going to pick something that looks kind of stone, sort of. Get a smooth concrete. Okay, and then over here I'm going to make it to where it's on stencil, and right mouse button, drag it out. I'm going to zoom in where I want it. strength up, F to increase my brush, and put that in there, and then out, and you can see the effect. Turn back to tiled so I can rotate around, so you can see very easy to paint. Now right now that's set for mix, so if I control Z, I'll go ahead and set it up for stencil again, but this time let me set it out for maybe multiply and set the strength back a little bit. Okay, so now you see it's mixing it, but actually like you're only getting the darkness into it. And so I could come back and change to add and add some texture, and then we can end up setting it up to bump. But that gives us a little something to work with, and a little bit smoother of an operation for painting. Alright, thanks a lot.